Hi everyone and welcome to StudioJake. I of course am your host Jacob Airy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to also remind you to head over to my new channel StudioJake Faith where I talk about religious topics. Be sure to subscribe over there. I'll have a link in the pinned comment. And now I'm going to jump into a very interesting topic. It's one that I've kind of discussed before both here and on my website studiojakemedia.com, but I wanted to really touch on this a little bit today because it's something that I've been thinking about, and that is the gaslighting that corporations are doing to the fans when it comes to their favorite television shows or movies or franchises, whatever it may be. And pardon me if you hear construction going on. There's been crazy construction all week, and I've been trying to find time when I could record it without the background just hasn't worked out. So anyway, as most of you know, I'm a fan of several things. I've got, as you can see, I'm a huge Batman fan. That pulls me into the comic book world. Also a Spider-Man fan. Batman and Spider-Man being my first and second favorite comic book heroes respectively. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I like Lord of the Rings. I like Chronicles of Narnia. Big Sherlock Holmes fan. As you can see, a bunch of the fandoms that I like are all up here. But it's really interesting because it's an interesting time to be a fan of a lot of these franchises because you're kind of faced with a tough decision because the content that's being put out isn't really that great. And now I am not a fan of Doctor Who or He-Man. In fact, I've only seen like a few episodes of the 2004 He-Man show. When it comes to Doctor Who, I've not watched a single episode. I've seen videos about Doctor Who or trailers for some of the content. And I'm not saying that I dislike either of them. I just haven't watched enough of them to be a fan. But that's not the case with Star Trek or Star Wars. Huge fans of those franchises, have been since I was little. I remember the first time my dad brought home the VHS set of the Star Wars trilogy, and it was really cool. A New Hope had Vader on the cover. Empire Strikes Back was a stormtrooper. Return of the Jedi was Yoda. It was really cool. It was a really neat VHS box set. For those of you who don't know what a VHS tape is, it was this square thing, and it was analog instead of digital, and you had to put it into this device called a VCR. And I'm not trying to be patronizing. I'm just showing off my age. But then you would have to rewind it manually, fast forward manually. It's not like a DVD player. And anyway, it was a lot of fun watching those films, and that was before George Lucas did all the weird edits he did later in the 2000s after the prequel trilogy came out. This was the original trilogy. It was just digitally remastered, so it was all the original films. There was no extra scenes or anything. It was just digitally enhanced, digitally remastered on VHS, and I loved it. I think my parents still have that box set somewhere. I wonder how much that would be on the market these days. But anyway, really cool. Of course, grew up watching Star Trek The Next Generation. That led into Voyager, DS9, Star Trek Enterprise. Now, I wasn't a huge fan of DS9 when I was younger. I appreciated it more when I was an adult. I still think it was kind of the first time Star Trek was being infected with sort of... Back then, it wouldn't have been called woke, but it was very politically correct. Star Trek Enterprise, a little bit too, but they kind of toned it back with Star Trek Enterprise. DS9, they could do it because it takes place on a space station, so you had more of a static area of expertise as opposed to the other places where the other ones like Next Gen and Voyager and Enterprise where you're exploring. And of course, those led me to love the original series. And I watched those when I was a teenager. I loved them. It's really interesting. Same with Star Wars. The original trilogy helped me develop a love for a prequel. It's kind of funny now because a lot of people didn't like the prequels. Now, I'm not trying to ramble. I'm just trying to establish how I am with a lot of these franchises. And it's really, really sad because these days it feels like these big corporate overlords have taken over a lot of the franchises. Now, Warner Brothers has owned DC Comics, I believe, since the 80s. That's why most of the DC comic movies are from Warner Brothers, is because Warner Brothers acquired them at some point and made all kinds of, you know, films and television shows as a result. Not obviously, not all of them are from there. Batman the Animated Series was originally on Fox. The Adam West Batman was on CBS, I think, originally. So, you know, they would still license out the properties sometimes to other places. Well, so they've had a corporate overlord, you know, for a long time. Same, and with Marvel, you know, Disney bought it sometime in the 2010s, maybe a little before that. Sorry if my years are off. And, you know, of course, the BBC owns Doctor Who. Now Netflix owns He-Man, or at least the distribution rights. They may not own it outright, but they own it. And, you know, Amazon Studios has the rights to Lord of the Rings. They're making a prequel series that they're basing out of, I believe, the Appendices and the Silmarillion. And we're watching as our franchises are being torn apart. As a Batman fan, I kind of see it in the comic books where they're changing certain characters' orientations, or they're making, or Batman is letting himself be bossed around by just rando characters who might have some sort of checkbox on the diversity and inclusivity scale higher than him because he's a rich white male, I guess, and straight. It's very bizarre, and it's kind of annoying, quite frankly. And as a fan, you're starting to see yourself get gaslit. So I used to be a huge fan of the X-Men. I wasn't as into it as with Spider-Man. Huge fan of the X-Men. Well, now you have these folks who are trying to tell you, oh, the X-Men was a stand-in for the civil rights movement, which that would have been very offensive, but that's what they try to tell you. And that's actually not true. There's actually, if you search on YouTube, there's clips of Stan Lee where he's outright denying this and saying, oh, no. It is true that I try to put in lessons about, you know, appreciating people who are different, but I didn't really mean it to be an echo. He goes, later writers put that in. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the point. The great late Stan Lee has pointed this out, and other folks like Young Ripa 5'9" and Nerdrotic and the Crickle Drinker, they've also pointed out things like this, and we're seeing this too, not just with you know, I mentioned Batman, but not just with him personally, but we're seeing this happen in real time with some of his sub characters. So like they turned Tim Drake gay. They had to backtrack though really quick, and then they made him bi. And then, you know, we see this with Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. She goes from being a villain who's sort of the Joker's muscle to and also his paramour, to now she's a victim of the Joker, and she has the sads, and so she turns to Poison Ivy, who is just as abusive to her as the Joker was. Of course, you know, the Harley Quinn animated series is trying to rewrite that a little bit, but it's just a fact. I mean, you can go back in the comic books and see this. We're seeing this with Star Trek, where, yeah, Star Trek was always meant to represent humanity at its idealist, but we're seeing New Trek trying to backtrack from that, and they're trying to put in lessons of, you know, overcoming prejudice and everything in 2022. You know, it's just ridiculous. And we see this with Doctor Who. They turned Doctor Who into a woman. And now, like I said, I'm not a Doctor Who fan. I only have a passing understanding of the thing. But where the gaslighting is when the current actress who is playing Doctor Who, when she gets criticized for being a bad actress or for not doing a good interpretation of the character, or the side characters, people don't like them, it immediately goes to, oh, you're sexist and you're a racist, and you throw all the other bigots, you're a Republican, oh heavens, you're a Republican, you know, whatever it is. And this is just such a gaslighting, because we also see this happening with Lord of the Rings. So Christopher Tolkien was the son of J.R.R. Tolkien, and he made sure that his father's legacy was preserved. That's why he knew Peter Jackson would do a good job with at least the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. I know he stretched out The Hobbit as far as it could go until it made a trilogy, which I still stand by. I think the first movie in The Hobbit is really good, but they should not have stretched out it into two other films. It got too bloated in the second one, and then it was too short for the third one. But anyway, that's just my own opinion. And we're seeing this now with Obi-Wan, right? With the series Obi-Wan Kenobi. So if you don't like any of the sub-characters, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're everything in between. And it's just so stupid. You just can't have this opinion that the character is bad or the actress is bad or the actor is bad because they are insert diverse talking points. And what's a shame is you expect these corporate overlords to do this a little bit. You know, we saw this Netflix when people were calling them out for their child exploitation film Cuties. Right, they were like, "Oh, this is cancel culture. How dare you come after me?" And it's like, no, it's a terrible movie. It's a bad movie. It has bad values and it exploits children, underage girls. You know, the French, they're all like, "Oh, how they're clutching the pearls." Oh, I can't believe the Americans are so offended by this. I don't know why I gave French people a British accent, but whatever. We bailed them out of, 3 wars, so it's fine. But, I just think that it's really dumb that that this gaslighting has kind of started because we have the receipts. Like I said earlier, Christopher Tolkien was the son of the creator of Middle Earth, J.R.R. Tolkien. And Tolkien, himself was a Catholic. He had very traditional values. He had very what we would call conservative values. And you can see that in the books. His Catholic faith is very reflective. Not all those who wander are lost. Some people choose to be exiles. This idea of doing what's right about standing up for evil. And if you criticize now the Amazon Studios Lord of the Rings of Power, no one cares about the diverse casting. It's the fact that Amazon Prime is trying to make it one of its selling points. If they had just said, hey, we picked so-and-so because we think they're right for the part, but no, it's got to be, we're going to rewrite this, we're going to deconstruct it, which is one of the stupidest things. We're going to subvert your expectations. Subverting expectations is so stupid. You should exceed my expectations. I thought that with the Batman. When I heard that Matt Reeves was going to base Bruce Wayne on Kurt Cobain, which I think is incredibly stupid. You should base Batman on Batman, and he was going to base the Riddler on the Zodiac Killer. And I admit the movie came off pretty good. I still think it had some dumb things in it, but I thought the movie overall was good. That being said, it's this gaslighting where it's like, oh well, Batman, he's been around since the 30s. Are we gonna do like the early Batman where he was like gunning down villains in the street? That's a gaslight. Batman didn't gun down villains in the street. It's true that he had a gun on his holster, and it is true that he in fact did terminate some villains, but he wasn't like the Punisher. He wasn't going around and just blasting things away. More on the Punisher later. And we see this now with other properties. Anytime you want to bring up something you have against it, you're gaslit into saying, oh no, it was always this way. What you loved was really not what you thought it was. It was really not that great. Your heroes were not that special. Yes, our heroes, our modern myths were special, and they were important. And they were important to people like me. I grew up reading these folks. They were very, very important. And we see this with George R.R. Martin, who's the creator of Game of Thrones. Now, I'm not a fan of Game of Thrones. I've never read any of the books, never watched the show, don't care about it, not into it. But he said something really bizarre to me where he was saying, how could you now hate something that you once loved? Totally gaslighting the fans. Never mind that the show ended terrible. Never mind that he's not finishing his series. But then he wants to have it both ways. And he wants to say, but, I can see if I'm making Great Gatsby, I want it to be the Great Gatsby. I don't want it to be a director's own version of it. Okay, well, make up your ever-loving mind, man. You're a hypocrite. Who cannot clearly finish what he started. And we're seeing this with Neil Gaiman with Sandman, right? He's starting to he created, the way he wrote Sandman was different characters were based on different rock stars and punk groups. And then now he wants to gaslight the fans and say it was always woke. And you fans who have butthurt over the changes made by Netflix, oh, you're just a bunch of istophobes. Okay, well, I hope that check from Netflix was really worth it, Neil Gaiman. And now we're seeing this with He-Man. The fans outright rejected He-Man Revelations, and Kevin Smith destroyed that franchise. As he done, he wrote 2 terrible Batman story arcs that the fans wholeheartedly rejected. His new movies no one likes. And I actually don't think his movies were that good to begin with. I always said he was a grifter and a poser. No one would listen to me. And now, here he is proving himself to be a grifter and a poser. And he's not well grounded. He's not a fan. Did you know that he tears the covers off his comic books, and his excuse for doing this is stupid? So don't tell me he's a fan. He's not a fan. He's a grifter who saw a fan base, because until the advent of the Dark Knight trilogy, the X-Men, and then the MCU, fans were kind of still considered, you know, outsiders. Trust me, I know, I was one. We were kind of seen as, oh, that guy's a nerd, right? And so Kevin Smith saw these guys and gals and thought, I'm going to create content for them. And so he moved into space, and he was more independent, more of a rebel. Fake! And now I've been proven right. He's a fake. He's a fraud. And he just pays lip service, and then does the bait and switch, as we call it now, which is what's happening with Thor: Love and Thunder. It's the bait and switch. I don't know why they don't just call it Thor bait and switch. I mean, it's obviously about Valkyrie and Jane, and Jane Foster, you know, picking up Mjolnir. You know, that was an arc in Marvel Comics that was rejected. The sales went down on Thor when Jane Foster picked up Mjolnir. That's why in the TV show they gave her her own hammer. They made her Thunderstrike, which is fine. Eric Masterson, he was a product of the 90s. He was around for a little while, but I think maybe even the 80s. I could be wrong, but anyway. So he was Thunderstrike for a while. He was kind of a replacement Thor. And so in the animated series, they made it where she was Thunderstrike. Great. That's fine. Give her her own hammer. Let her have it. Give her the one from the Ultimate Universe. But I hope that over time, fans will start recognizing what's happening, where they're being gaslit, they're being pressured. I'm seeing this. I'm part of a nerd community on Facebook, a part of a private group, and we're seeing people who reject Obi-Wan are being gaslit by the fans of Obi-Wan in that private group. It's really disturbing, and it's really, really disgusting. And I think that everyone's catching on now, because we're already seeing Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, where they're changing Galadriel from being a wise seer. She's very ethereal. Now they're just gonna turn her into just another version, a female version of Aragorn. Who wants to see that? We want to see Galadriel be wise. She's thousands of years old at the point of Rings of Power. Why would you? She knows who she is. Why did you want to have her go on some selfish quest to find herself? It's so stupid, and it's really annoying. I hate to say it, but maybe it's time to start gatekeeping these fans. We were all welcoming and letting these folks in with these different opinions when they didn't even buy the stuff. I mean, let's be real. If these SJWs, these woke people who are calling us bigots, who are siding with the showrunners and stuff, who are starting to attack and gaslight us, if they were real fans, the prices, the sales of things would have gone up. They're not. They're going down. Ratings are dropping. Sales of comic books are cratering. Everyone's going to manga and indie comics. So let's be real. Let's post receipts. Let's show them where they're wrong. Let's prove it. And, you know, I know that sounds harsh, but maybe it's time. We have to fight back against the gaslighting. Now, I'm not talking about fighting back physically, but I'm talking about showing facts, showing evidence. And I know that may take some of the fun out of it, out of being a fan, but we don't have a choice at this point. We have to show folks that these fandoms are something special, and they were special before these greedy corporate overlords and their fake fans got their hands on them. If you liked that video, I would really appreciate it if today was the day you chose to subscribe. Be sure to leave me a comment and tell me what you thought about the video. No matter what platform you are watching on, I'm on multiple, so please like the video, subscribe, leave me a comment, share it out. It really helps me in the algorithm. You can follow me on all my socials. They're in the video description. And be sure to head over to my website, StudioJakeMedia.com. If you would like to support me, head over to my locals page, which is StudioJakeMedia.locals.com. Sign up there. I've got exclusive content. I've got all the postings from my vidcast and from my website, not to mention links where you can purchase my novels. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.